everyone.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Chatham Select Board February 16th, 2021 meeting. This is a remote participation only meeting. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify me. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. A conference ID 134-208-476#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. For efficiency, while we are using this remote format, please mute your audio until you're called on to speak. At that time, you'll be able to use the Teams app, a feature that raises your hand. And if you're on the phone, you'll be able to speak out to me and let me know that you would like to speak. Also, and equally important, please disable your video until the appropriate time to present or comment. Please remember, this is a business meeting, and I'm pretty sure other attendees really don't want to see your ceiling or your unattended room or your dining room or you dining. And I'll be frank here, lounging in your chair or on your bed or even making dinner. It's somewhat distracting, to say the least. So we're going to take a roll call of the select board, and I'll start with Board Member Kokolis.
Present.
Board Member Metters.
Present.
Board Member Dykins.
Present.
Board Member Nicastro.
Present.
And the chair is present. We have a quorum. All right, our first order of business tonight is to accept the meeting minutes of February 9th, 2021. Do I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes?
So moved, Peter.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or edits? I see that Dean's hand's up first, Corey, then Peter. Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two edits. One on page 7, at the second to last paragraph. I would like to add a sentence at the very end after the word boathouses, which reads as follows. It was suggested that if the boathouse were to return to Chatham, restoration should include the original paint scheme. I'll read that again. It was suggested that if the boathouse were to return to Chatham, restoration should include the original paint scheme. And the second one is on page 10. This is the second full paragraph, which begins, the inability to support the acceptance without a plan. I'd like to rework that sentence so that it reads as follows. The inability to support the acceptance of the building without a plan for its location, use, and cost was expressed. I'll read that again. The inability to support the acceptance of the building without a plan for its location, use, and cost was expressed. Those are my edits.
Okay. I'm not sure who's shuffling paper, but it's kind of hard to hear, so just be mindful of that. Any others, Dean?
No, that's it. Thank you, Shireen.
Okay. Thank you, Dean. Corey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Page 4, I just want to make a slight adjustment to the last paragraph that starts with Clerk Metters. Clerk Metters requested, I want to insert the word when. I'm going to read it in its entirety, and then I'll add the last sentence. Clerk Metters requested when the board receives the responses to the questions posed to Massachusetts Department of Transportation, MDOT, by staff on the West Chatham roadway project after the board's January 12, 2021 meeting. I want to omit the rest of the sentence and add,
Hate these backgrounds, they're terrible.
an agenda item be scheduled for follow-up discussions by the board. I can read that. Got that?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Let me remind everybody to please mute their audio. Thank you. I think, Peter, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, a couple of nits on page 7, on the third paragraph from the bottom in the middle where it's, the line reads be needed. It be needed, but not a lot. Add a T. Page 9, on the second to last paragraph, second line, where it starts procurement process, period. Town Council Costello said he agreed that a lease was there. By the way, I did add the one about, had the one about the paint that Selectman DeCastro had. And then on page 10, two other really small ones, top of the line, top of the paragraph, first line, to use the second floor and delete of the. And then on the sixth paragraph down, starting with Mr. Farrell, and the third line that starts the potential and just delete of that comes after that.
Okay.
So thank you.
All right. All right. So let's take a vote on the meeting minutes with the amended edits or the edits. All right. Board Member Kokolas,
Aye.
Board Member Metters. I think you're muted, Corey.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Dankins,
Aye.
Board Member Nacastro,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. So that's 5-0-0. Okay, great. All right. So our next order of business is public announcements and meeting agenda item requests. First off, I just want to note, and Selectman Nacastro had emailed me today to let us all know that Bob Shafter, who was an enthusiastic member of the Railroad Museum Working Group since 2016, I believe, passed away. And we just want to send our thoughts to his family and our condolences. Okay. Again, is there any public announcements from the board members? I see, Dean, you've got your hand up. Go ahead, Dean.
I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Quite okay. Any board members have a meeting agenda announcements or agenda item requests? Seeing none, I will move to the remote participants. Please raise your hand or call out your name and I'll make a note. I'm not hearing any. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to do a quick review of our meeting tonight so that everybody knows where we're standing. Our next order of business will be our new business. We will have a coronavirus update as we have been doing for the last several, well, almost a year now. Then we will turn to public comments on our business agenda items. And then what we'll do is at this time, that's when folks have an opportunity to speak on our business agenda items. They have a 5-minute speaking time allowance, and our business agenda items will be on the operating capital budgets, the annual town meeting article, potential review of Middle Road and 127 Old Harbor, Attainable Housing Trust Fund. And then we did have on our agenda the real estate transfer tax, but we are going to table that for a future meeting. So we'll move on to the Community Preservation Act, special legislation relative to attainable housing, and our Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees follow-up items on Habitat for Humanity and the emergency rental assistance. We'll get a quarterly update. Then again, then we will move into our board discussion on those items, followed by public comments on the business agenda items. And then we will have a motion to go into executive session relevant to private property acquisition. So there we have it. So I guess we're going to go to Dr. Duncanson for his report, a COVID update. Dr. Duncanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for tonight's COVID-19 update, right now in Barnstable County, as of last night, because tonight's numbers have just come out, we had 9,632 cases in Barnstable County. That was an increase of 32 cases, which is a better number than we were seeing the last couple of weeks. We were down in the 30 to 40 cases a day, and then we peaked again back up close to 100. Well, now we're back down in the 20s and 30s per day, which is good news. Looks like we kind of got over that little mini surge that we were seeing towards the end of January and early February. Right now in Barnstable County, there are 380 deaths, which is an increase of 3 from the previous day. In Chatham, we currently have 251 cases. And if you let me share my screen here for a second, I will show you the graph as to where we're at. So can everybody see our monthly graph? January was our worst. January of this year was the worst month since the pandemic began in Chatham and really around the world. We have seen a dramatic drop in cases so far in February. We currently are at 33 cases in February, and we're almost halfway through the month. So if that continues, we'll be in pretty good shape. We'll have about half the number of cases we had in January. And we've had 49 cases resolved so far in February, and that's expected given the substantial peak of cases we had in January, some of those coming in the latter part of the month. So they basically finished their quarantine and isolation period in February. So they're counted towards February, but you can see a fairly substantial decrease after the peaks that we saw starting in December, carried through into January. So that's our total caseload. We've had 25 deaths so far since the pandemic began. And as we've indicated previously, about 75% of those were related to the Liberty Commons long-term care facility. They've had no deaths recently, and as we announced last week, the last of their COVID-19 folks that were in their COVID-19 dedicated ward had moved back into the regular housing location. So that was good news, and we're seeing that reflected here now for the second week in a row with a fairly substantial drop-off in cases. In terms of age distribution of our cases, this is the graph we show every week, and it shows the demographic breakdown of the 251 cases we've had since the pandemic began. So basically, we've had 5 new cases since last week's report. And the interesting thing is all 5 of those cases were in the younger demographic. We had 4 cases in the 30 to 39-year-old age grouping, and we had 1 new case in the 20 to 29-year-old age grouping. So, as we've reported the last couple of weeks, we are definitely seeing a shift in the demographic. Back in December and January, the majority of our cases were in the 80 and older demographic, mainly because of the involvement of the Liberty Commons nursing facility. But since that has resolved, we are definitely seeing the majority of cases now in the younger demographic, similar to what we saw prior to the kind of December, January timeframe. Let me stop sharing my screen here. Just a couple of other things that I wanted to touch on in tonight's report. In terms of vaccine distribution, the county has now started, they're now in their second week of second doses for first responders, folks that received their first dose, towards the end of January or middle of January. They're now getting their second dose with either the Pfizer vaccine at 28 days or Moderna at 21 days. There's going to be 840 doses administered tomorrow in Orleans. That was announced on Friday. And I could tell you that it filled up in 16 minutes. We were watching as it went along, and it took 16 minutes for all the available slots to be filled up. There were actually a couple of available slots when I looked this afternoon, obviously because people had canceled for various reasons. But that clinic for tomorrow is full. There may be another clinic later this week. We don't have any particulars yet. The county was really waiting to get a better handle on what the weather was going to look like, because that would be an outdoor clinic in Eastham, similar to one that was held last week. So if that does happen, that will be announced later this week. And then again, the county is tentatively planning for clinics again next week. However, there has been some delay in the shipment of vaccines, primarily because of the extreme weather conditions in other parts of the country. The vaccines are shipped directly from the manufacturer, so there have been some delays in those shipments. So rather than put out public notice yet about clinics for next week, the county, as they've been doing, wants to make sure the vaccine is in hand before they formally announce those clinics. And then just one other thing I wanted to touch on, because there has been some news about it, and it really is important for people to be aware of. Massachusetts now has reported 29 cases of the B117, or the UK, also known as the UK variant. We had previously had 10 cases of that, and 4 of those cases were travel related. Over the weekend, the state announced another 19 of those 19 cases of that variant, and none of those appear to be travel related. So it is clear that the so-called UK variant is in Massachusetts and is spreading within the communities, and it's not necessarily travel related. So far, since that press release was announced, there's been 5 additional cases of that variant announced or detected by the state. And the important thing to know about is the other variants, the so-called South African variant, as well as another variant that is in the United States. None of those have been detected in the U.S., in Massachusetts so far. But because it's been detected in other locations in the U.S., it's probably not unrealistic to think at some point it will be detected in Massachusetts. And the important thing to keep in mind is not all cases are being checked for what variant they are, only a relatively small subset. And that's just based on laboratory capability, both at the federal level as well as at the state level. It's just impossible right now to test every positive one for what variant it may be. So, people just need to continue to take the appropriate precautions, wear a mask, social distance, wash your hands or use hand sanitizer. And that's even more important now as the vaccine is being rolled out, to continue to practice those things. More than likely, we will be continuing to do that through the spring and into the summer, because, even as vaccine gets rolled out, there is some evidence, especially from South Africa, that people that had COVID-19 originally, with the original base variant, if you will, are capable of being reinfected with the South African variant. So continuing to take the appropriate cautions is prudent public health guidance and will be for a period of time. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does the select board have any questions for Bob? I see Peter's hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And Bob, I'm just going to make a comment. Last Friday, we went up to Gillette. A week prior, I had signed up for Gillette, and some trepidation in a way. It's an hour and a half drive. It's a very nice drive, and I was glad to see that I had to miss the selectmen counselors meeting, but they put out a letter, maybe Shireen can talk to it more importantly, that we should do something like what's a Gillette on, and I agree wholeheartedly. Let me tell you, from the minute you start, first of all, the software worked like it's supposed to. You know, you could sign up, and I have to admit, they had, at the time we were looking, had 2,500 or so plus vaccinations that you could sign up for. From the time you drive in to going through the process and coming out, it's just, it's well done. There's plenty of social distancing. There's plenty of room to do it. And by the way, you sign up while you're online, while you're there for your next one, and it goes immediately into what's it? Moderna is 20, whatever the number of days is, you get your next appointment. Of course, the downside is you have to be able to be mobile enough, and you have to be able to drive up. So that makes it a problem. But if we can do that there, we should be able to do it on a Cape. That's my only comment. Thanks.
Yeah, the evidence that we have is we are not going to be getting a mass vaccination site on the Cape like we're seeing in other parts of the state. As I mentioned last week, the state did announce 2 new clinics, mass vaccination sites last week, the closest one being Dartmouth. The state has indicated to us that Barnstable County is doing a good job getting the vaccine out. And so rather than the state setting up a mass vaccination site here on Cape, they are going to work through the county. You know, that's great news in some respects. It would be really great news if the state backed that up with the kind of vaccine numbers that they're making available at places like Gillette and others. You know, if we could get thousands of vaccines a day for the Cape, that would be wonderful news. But we are still only getting roughly 975 doses a week on Cape Cod for the county-run clinics. Now, some of the places like CVS and other pharmacies are getting doses that are separate and distinct from what the county gets, but still 975 doses a week is not what the Cape needs. We need significantly more than that. Yeah. And we're really hoping that in the not too distant future, the state will come through with larger numbers of doses.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions for Dr. Bob? Any others from the remote participants? Elaine?
Yes, thank you. I think it's ironic that Baker actually mentioned in one of his press conferences that Barnstable County had the oldest population in the state. And for him to take that attitude that he is not going to put this kind of facility in here because it appears it causes 2 problems. And the first is the software we have here that if you check senior or vaccination, nothing shows up. So unless somebody has read the memo that don't check the boxes, even though they tell you to at mass immunizations, you will not be able to make an appointment because you will not see anything available. And the second piece that I think is really disturbing is that we cannot, when people get their first vaccine, they are not given an appointment for the second one. And so the risk you run is that because we're getting so little that when people are due for their second shot, there may not be a supply. And as we move forward, you know what Baker's going to do. He's going to go into phase 2 when we haven't even finished phase 1. And I think the other thing that I've written this to the county, I haven't heard back, but we've got to restrict vaccinations to full-time residents of Barnstable County because the tourists are going to start arriving, summer residents, and they are going to want to get and expect to get vaccines. And we don't have enough for our full-time population. So for them to say that it's for people who either live or work on the Cape, I think the working piece, if people are coming from off Cape, they can go to Plymouth, they can go to Gillette. So it should be restricted to the county. And to do otherwise, I don't understand what Baker's got against Cape Cod, but I'm starting to take it very personally. We seem to be like a third world country to him, and that's got to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Bob for the back? Okay. Jill? Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Jill?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have anything else to report, and I'll defer to you to talk about the letter that was sent to the governor.
Right. Okay, thank you. So in the reopening task force, it's now called the COVID-19 task force, because the reopening seemed to indicate that we were just pushing for reopening when we were doing a lot of work around advocating for testing and vaccines on the Cape. Rep Peake and Senator Sears had put together an ask letter, the sign-on letter that they distributed amongst the town managers and the Board of Selectmen. The sign-on letter essentially was asking for more vaccines for the town, for the Cape and for the county, and also for a mass vaccination site. As of yesterday or this afternoon, received a word from Rep Peake's office that 75 Board of Selectmen members or Select Board members and town managers signed on to that letter. There has been crickets so far, according to Rep Peake, from the governor's office. But again, I'm going to urge everybody that here's his number and get your pencil out. 617-725-4005. I'm going to repeat that. 617-725-4005. Call the governor and keep the pressure on. He is getting inundated with these calls, but I think the more pressure, the better. The other things that I can just speak to on the side that just to add to Bob's work, there's a lot of concern for the homebound residents of our communities, and the county is working with and will be working with the towns and on getting information to create a list to be able to outreach to the more homebound. The county commissioners this afternoon are discussing contracting a private company that has mobile vaccination capability. They were talking about expending funds for that to come to the Cape. I guess it's a Quincy-based or a company. I'm not sure exactly what it was. What the name is. As far as some of the issues that we heard about the Melody tent in the past weeks about how crazy and chaotic that test site was, the county decided that in the future, if they use that site for vaccinations again, they will limit the vaccinations to 500 folks. They did try to do 1,300 and it was over 1,000, and it was very it just didn't work out quite well. They are seeing great successes in the Eastham National Seashore site at Little Creek, and they're going to be using that as well as others, the county fairgrounds, and there's Truro and the Orleans DPW to date. Pharmacies are getting a lot of vaccinations. I think even on the national level, Biden's administration announced today that they were dispersing through the pharmacy vaccination program more for pharmacies. So it looks like they're getting it, not our healthcare people, but they are. So another option for people to take advantage of, as well as the governor has put together, or the state has a new registration sign up for vaccine form that they're claiming that is better. I know people snoop around the sites. I don't know how that impacts, and I mean snooping, they check out to see what the process is. I don't really know how that impacts other people's ability that are really deserving or merit getting a vaccination. But I'd really, ask people that they allow the people that need to get on that site to be able to get on that site. Okay, all right. Any questions? Any questions for me, or I guess not to Jill, on what I reported out? Okay, all right. We're going to move on, and I just want to note something that I forgot. That there is, after our public comments, we are having a public hearing, and that is the continuing hearing of the HBDC decision. And we'll probably be closing out that hearing based on the HBDC's actions. So anyway, let's move on, and I will accept public comments right now on any business agenda item. And I just want to review for people on that, if you have the Teams app, please raise your hand, and it can be on any of the matters that we're going to discuss in our business meeting. If you are on the phone and cannot use the app, please let me know your name and I will make a list and call on you as well. Is there anybody on the phone that would like to speak? Okay. I just do want to note on this particular, just for everybody in the public, we have received several emails in relation to the affordable housing items, this particularly agenda item agenda item number 1 on the town-owned property. So many emails there. Okay, so first, since I haven't heard from anybody on the phone, let's go down the line here. Elaine, is your hand still up, or did you want to speak?
Yes, I'd like to
Okay.
speak. It's just on one
Okay.
item. It's
Go ahead,
habitat.
Elaine. And I just want to remind everybody that we have a 5-minute opportunity to speak. And that's, go ahead, Elaine.
Yes, I just have one item, and it's the Habitat for Humanity property at
ahead.
11 George Ryder South. At least Lot B is within the southern part of the runway protection zone. And I looked through the documents and I did not see where any request for comment was made from the Airport Commission. We had talked about this earlier, that in terms of residential development within the RPZ is something that is not looked on favorably by the FAA. So I don't know if that's something that should be included in the deed so that any purchaser understands that they are within the runway protection zone. And for future reference, I think anytime there is development here, the Airport Commission, I think they're going to be reaching out to the various boards that they should be made aware of it so they can weigh in. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see that the chair of the Chatham Housing Community Partnership is next. Carolyn McClellan. Welcome,
Hello,
Carolyn.
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so yes, I'm the chair of the Chatham Community Housing Partnership. And in regards to the housing issues you're going to be discussing today, there's just a couple of items I wanted to discuss for clarification, mostly on some of the past meetings. A number of members or people in the public, and then I think it was echoed by some board members, have referenced a rationale for not building in Middle Road, citing the comprehensive plan, saying that they recommend scattered sites throughout the community. And I just wanted to mention the comprehensive plan a little bit, that was a document written in 2003. They allocate 4.5 pages towards housing, and want to emphasize how antiquated that document is. I think in the second paragraph on the first page, the last line, one of the comments that they make is how few homes are available for sale under $200,000. So I think a lot of those things have passed. Another thing that they list is their goals to reach the 10% of capital A, which all towns want to do. Is their goal was in 2005 for us to reach 5%. In 2010 that we would reach 7.5%. And in 2015, we'd be at 10%. My current understanding is we're at just over 5% right now. So if I was to quote the comprehensive plan, I would use it as evidence of Chatham's tragic failure to solve this problem and to prioritize it and to do more than talk about it. So, and there's a lot of other documents out there that have been produced more recently. We have the 365 Task Force, which did a wonderful study about the struggles that local families are having. And they recommend clustered neighborhoods, cluster housing, and a CHOP style housing neighborhood, possibly. FinCom, the Finance Committee, which the job is to decide how we spend our money and make recommendations as to what's a good investment for the community. They think housing is a priority. They did a wonderful study in 2019. They specifically mentioned the 127 Old Harbor Road and Middle Road for housing development. And we also have this other wonderful document, which is the Housing Production Plan for 2018. This is our most current document. The state mandates that we have this study done. And on page, I think it's 87, they specifically mention that Middle Road should be developed for housing. Now, I assume all of you have read this document. I don't think the public generally does. I was thumbing through it to prepare for this meeting, and there's a lot of data in here that I personally would love to share, but I think you've all heard it before. But there's one thing that I want to point out to you now, and I want you to think about moving forward as you make your decisions. And this is, it's on the introduction of the Housing Production Plan, page 10 at the bottom. And it references the comprehension plan, the long-range comprehensive plan. And it talks about a quote that the comprehensive plan has. And I'm just going to read it to you. And it says, when one compares the maximum affordable home purchase price for the average locally employed Chatham couple or family to the average list price for Chatham residential properties, it is clear that it is a remarkable affordability gap for local employed Chatham workers and residents who wish to acquire their own home. Again, we all know this. This is old news. This was in the local comprehensive plan. And if you look at the very last line on page 10, it notes that this quote actually comes from a document in the Affordable Housing Strategies for Chatham in 1988. So we have been singing this song for over 30 years. And that's my point to you tonight for you to consider, because I don't want to sit here 10 years, 5 or 10 years from now and talk about another plan that they put out and how we should develop housing, how we haven't met our goals. I mean, the 127 Old Harbor Road property is a perfect example. It's a house just sitting there. I don't want to be here 5 years from now and have it still sitting there and not have been developed. It's a perfect house. It's centrally located. We already own it. You guys know all this, but it's really unacceptable for that not to be added to the housing stock. It's an easy fix. We don't need to park 4th of July floats there or boats or anything else. We can use it for housing. That's a good use for it. So I just want you folks to think about that moving forward. And I do appreciate all the work that you're doing. I know you're trying, but we really need to make a move here. If you look at the town of Orleans, they're already at 9.2%, and they just agreed to develop a property, the Cape Cod 5, and add 62 units of affordable housing. So, I mean, we got to keep up with our neighbors here. We're one of the most affluent communities on the Cape, and it's absolutely unacceptable that these are our statistics. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. Our next speaker is, and all I see, I apologize because what I see is CC. So whoever CC is, it's your turn. CC. The initials are CC, so go ahead. Oh, Tracy.
Is it me?
It's you. Yes, go ahead, Tracy.
I'm on Chris's computer.
Yes,
Sorry,
you are.
guys.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're
I just wanted to chime in, if I could, to reiterate what my fellow board members have been saying over the last few months. I'm the vice chair of the Affordable Housing Committee in Chatham, but I'm also the director of the Housing Authority. And so I feel like I see the need in town a little bit clearer than a lot of people do. We see applications from every demographic in Chatham. We see elderly, we see families, we see non-elderly disabled, anybody in Chatham, anybody really in the state, because we're a state housing authority, we see them all. And basically the way, when people come to us and they're looking for housing, we go to our first, when we get an open unit in my housing authority, we go to our emergency list. And our emergency list, we then pare down to veterans and local residents. So what we're looking at first and foremost is we're looking at people in Chatham who are homeless. And by homeless, we don't mean necessarily living in their car. We mean that they're at risk of being homeless. They've run out of money. They can't afford their rent anymore. And these are so often elderly people and also families. And so what happens is we take this emergency list, and if we exhaust the local residents and we exhaust the veterans, we then have to go to everybody else in the state. And the reason that I'm pointing that out is that we are all there is, the Chatham Housing Authority. We are all there is in Chatham for low income and or affordable elderly housing. And so what ends up happening is people that are not homeless people that are not yet there, if they're Chatham residents, they're never going to get a unit in my housing authority. They're never going to get one until they're facing homelessness, to the point where they have no place to live or they're about to have no place to live. This is an incredibly precarious place for the seniors of Chatham to be. And we're talking about people who have raised their kids in this town. We're talking about people who have worked in this town. We're talking about multi-generations. I have tenants that are multi-generational in my housing authority. And the only way for them to become tenants where I am is for them to be facing homelessness. I find that unbelievably heartbreaking, frankly. As a resident of Chatham, I find that heartbreaking. So when I see an opportunity like this 19 acres on Middle Road come up, it just feels almost irresponsible to me not to delegate the entire 19 acres to housing. There's more than enough need in Chatham. I'm only talking about the elderly, and I still have hundreds of people on my list for family units. So we're talking every demographic, we're talking every, you name it, we've got it. We've got the need in Chatham, and more than enough need to fill those two lots. I mean, if you even want to look at the elementary school issue, that's a whole other issue, but it seems to me to be pretty simple. You need more families. It means more kids. It means more classrooms, but those families need places to live. And certainly our elderly, incredibly vulnerable population needs to know that there's a place they can go, that they can apply, and know that they're going to be able to live out whatever years in a safe and affordable place. And we need it, and we need it real bad, and we need as much as we can get. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tracy. Okay, our next commentor is, just check, George Myers. Mr. Myers, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to comment on the agenda item relating to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. As you know, the trust fund was established 15 years ago by town meeting pursuant to a Massachusetts general law, as established then by the town, and is presently constituted. The fund trustees are you 5 members of the select board and 2 of your appointees. The statute states that the purpose of the trust is to provide for the creation and preservation of affordable housing for the benefit of low and moderate income households. In furtherance of that purpose, the statute grants you, as trustees, broad powers to take action independently of town meeting. In fact, the statute lists 16 specific powers you have as trustees. And by the way, I was pleased to see that the town council's proposed housing trust fund legislation for both affordable and attainable housing includes all those 16 powers. I want to speak to 2 of those 16 powers, the ones that authorize you to employ advisors and agents as you deem necessary, and to pay whomever you employ a reasonable compensation from the trust funds. For 15 years, the trustees have had the statutory authority to employ and pay professionals to help relieve Chatham's affordable housing shortage. In 2018, the Community Development Department and the Community Housing Partnership, with you as their liaison, Madam Chair, prepared and submitted to the state Chatham's housing production plan. And in that plan, the 2 groups recommended hiring a housing professional to manage the overall coordination and implementation of Chatham's housing objectives. Consistent with that recommendation, Rick Levitt and I urge you to have the town manager hire a housing professional for a long-term commitment to build affordable housing. At least 8 Cape towns have already hired a housing professional for that purpose. But if you as trustees employ and pay a housing professional, you can be certain that professional meets your standards, your objectives, your job description, and most importantly, it is answerable directly to you. There's no question that a professional whose sole task is to get affordable housing constructed in Chatham will more rapidly advance the town's housing goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Myers. Okay, Dean, your hand is up. Go
Yes,
ahead,
thank
Dean.
you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. Forgive me for interrupting, but I did want to bring something to the attention of my fellow board members and the public. George had emailed me today a list of comments relative to the draft legislation that Town Council prepared for the Affordable Housing Trust. I forwarded that to you as well as to the Town Manager and the Town Council for their information. I just really wanted to just make that point that information has been passed along. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Okay, our next speaker is Rick Levitt. Rick?
Thank you, Shireen. I'm commenting on the push to develop town-owned open space on Middle Road for affordable housing. All of us, every one of us, is anxious to get going on a sustainable housing program that meets Chatham's housing needs for all income levels. But we need to be careful setting precedent for a major housing program like this, with more projects to come, not just Middle Road. Chatham's Affordable Housing Trust important guidelines. One is Light Road. Another is promote smart growth development policies to guide development in appropriate locations. Availability of town-owned land on Middle Road does not automatically mean that the site on Middle Road is appropriate for affordable housing. Middle Road does not meet the trust guidelines. The Middle Road site is in the midst of Chatham's major industrial area, with modern sewer treatment plant, former landfill, current transfer station, 2 large renewable energy sites, and a large industrial park. Housing trust guidelines are careful to point out that any stigma associated with low-income housing should be minimized. Arguably, building affordable housing in the midst of a major industrial area when more suitable locations are available maximizes the risk of stigma. Chatham's comprehensive plan recommends instead that mixed income, affordable, attainable housing be located in Chatham's 6 village centers or within close proximity, fitting into residential neighborhoods and minimizing any stigma of low-income housing. Rather than segregating Chatham's working families to a remote industrial part of town, smart growth policy seeks to integrate working families in vibrant neighborhoods on already developed land, preferably hooked up to the sewer. Locating a large lower income housing project on Middle Road's environmentally sensitive 19 acres of open space requires large septic systems. Smart growth policy seeks to preserve sensitive open space. Developing town-owned open space on Middle Road is unnecessarily land consumptive. It is not good environmental policy. The Middle Road site has 3 strikes against it. Its location in a major industrial area risks stigmatizing lower income families. Its development consumes land and compromises the environment. I recommend that you ask staff to identify more suitable sites for affordable housing that meet trust and plan guidelines, regardless of whether the site is town or privately owned. Thank you very much.
Shireen, you're muted.
You're on mute, Shireen.
Thank you, Rick. Sorry. I just asked if there's any other folks that would like to comment on our business agenda items tonight. And I'm not seeing any.
Shereen,
Yes.
Shereen, it's
Yes.
Shirley. Is there going to be a chance at the end of the meeting where you also have public comment before you go into executive session?
Yes, we
Or
are.
is this it?
Nope, we have public comment after our business agenda item discussion. So you'll have an
Okay,
opportunity.
thank you. I'll come
Okay.
back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on then. And our next is a public hearing. And I just need to find my stuff. Oh, there we go. I just want to let you know this public hearing is an open meeting that is an ongoing meeting from, I believe it was, we had this meeting December 22nd.
Yep, that's correct, mate.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. We had the meeting December 22nd, and the select board heard from Chatham Productions LLC on of the HBDC's decisions on their applications for demolition of certain buildings on Main Street, 776 Main Street and 70 Depot Road. Basically, we voted to affirm the decision of the application on one of the sites at 70 Depot Road, but we remanded the other applications back to HBDC to continue, and then continued this hearing for 60 days to allow the applicant to submit an acceptable concept plan for their consideration with return to the board after the HBDC actions. So I guess what we need to do is, I'm not sure if committee member Silver is on the meeting, or community development can report out the hearings decisions that they made February 5th. I think it was February 5th or 3rd. Excuse me, February 3rd. Corey, your hand is up. I just wanted.
Just a procedural question. Is it necessary to reread the appeal hearing notice or not?
No, it's noted in our agenda packet that this is continuation. So
Perfect.
basically, we just want to get the information out to the public on the findings, and then we'll vote to potentially close the hearing. Or go ahead. Jill, are you reporting on this tonight?
Well, I'm going to ask Katie to report on it, and she has a suggested motion that just came in from town council when you're ready to close the hearing. Thank you.
Great, okay.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to go over the HBDC held hearings on actually all 5 of the applications, including 70 Depot Road, on February 3rd, and they did vote to allow for the demolition of all 5 of those buildings on February 3rd. So there is, I think that the select board can close the public hearing if they're satisfied with that, those decisions by the HBDC. And as stated, I can offer a motion as drafted by town council,
Okay.
If you'd like.
Okay, so I think as a matter of process, we close the public hearing, but we probably should be hearing from the public first. So I'm going to have, I think Dean's hand is up, and then I'll call on the remote participants to see if there's any comments related. Dean?
Yes, Madam Chair, I was going to suggest that you invite the public for comments, so you got in ahead of me on that. I do have a comment I'll make myself on my behalf. I do want to commend the HBDC and the applicant for being able to work this out on the representation, which was heard by the commission on the 5th of February. I think it was a good result, and I'm glad they followed our strong encouragement. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dean. Are there any participants who would like to speak at this public hearing? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I think as a matter of process, we close the hearing and then we make a motion. Is that correct? Am I correct in the process? Shauna?
Sorry, yes, go ahead and vote to
Yes.
close the meeting.
And then accept a motion. Okay, Dean, go ahead.
I move that we close the hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll take a vote to close the hearing. Peter?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. So the meeting is now closed. Do we have a recommended motion, Katie?
Sure, Madam Chair, this recommended motion is to move that the Select Board accept the final decisions of the HBDC issued upon remand on February 3rd, 2021, with respect to the applications for demolition permits relating to the following properties and applications at 70 Depot Road and 776 Main Street, that said decisions be incorporated into the record of said appeals before this board, and that said appeals be disposed of in accordance therewith.
Great.
So moved.
So
Second.
moved. And a second. Okay, thank you, Katie. We have a motion and then we have a second. So let's take a vote on that unless there's any discussion by the board. Okay, none. Let's take a vote. Peter,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. Motion passes. Okay, thank you, Katie, for that motion. Okay. All right, so let's just look at where we're at now. Okay, we have continuation of that hearing. Now we're moving into our business agenda, and this is board discussion items. And first is fiscal year 2022 operating and capital budget review. If we have any comments and questions, I think this is just an overview of what we've been presented. I think Jill is looking for any feedback we may have on this before we finalize it. Yeah, go ahead, Jill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we have our Finance Director, Alex Halila, who's in the meeting, who's going to go through some of the changes since we last presented the budget to you back in January. So there's been some evolution, health insurance rates, namely, and a few other items that she had in the memo, and we'll go over that. The plan would be for the board at your next meeting to vote to transmit the FY22 operating and capital budget to the Finance Committee, and that's when they'll do their deep dive in the review. They've done preliminary reviews. This is the Finance Committee, and they should be presenting their report, which are the initial recommendations to the board, as they typically do in a two-step process, and they'll present that at the next select board meeting. So this is an opportunity, if you have any questions, if there's any inconsistencies that you're seeing in the budget book, there's a couple of capital items that Alex can go over, and Alex did meet with the FinCom today to review the very same thing. So I can turn it over to Alex if the chair desires.
Sure.
Okay.
Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jill. Yeah, in your packet tonight, again, there's, as the town manager mentioned, some adjustments in health insurance. The good news is that the operating budget at this time has gone down from when first presented in January, mainly due to the health insurance. And what has happened there is it's going to be a 2 to 3% increase. However, there's going to be a premium holiday for the town and the employees. So once we work that out, we just level funded to the same amount that was funded for FY 2021. Not a lot to report this year for changes. We're still waiting for the schools to come in, and that's another discussion that we've had previously regarding Chatham Elementary School in particular. So again, I'm happy to go through any questions you might have on the operating budget. I think I'd like to deal with that first before we go into capital, if you should have any specifics on the operating budget as it stands right now.
Okay, any questions on the operating budget? Dean's hand is up first. Go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, this is really a question on your cover memo, Alex. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just noted, and I do commend the town manager and you, Alex, and the staff in general for bringing the increase down under 2%. It's mentioned that the town has a proposal from a new audit firm. Do we routinely change our auditors every so many years? I know that's become industry practice in the corporate world. Is that what's happening here? If you can speak to it.
Yes, I can. Thank you. Actually, our audit firm, due to COVID, it's a smaller audit firm. So the one that we had for FY19 And we've had them for several years. So due to logistics, they weren't able to come out and do in-person auditing, and they don't have the drop boxes that other audit firms have. So they recommended that we go out and reach out to 3 different audit firms. They gave us our names. So that's why we're changing audit firms this year. And this audit firm, when speaking to them, had some recommendations to sort of automate some of our processes, which might cost money up front, and then will be, it's just sort of a one-time.
Thank you very much. That was my question.
Okay, Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alex, Jill, good job. It's not often you see the budget go down, especially with the health insurance decrease being the driver. So it's really kind of neat to see that. I had the same question that Selectman Castro had about the audit firm. Can you give out the name of the new audit firm, Alex?
Yes, we've contracted with Powers and Sullivan.
Okay.
So I've, in one of my previous towns, I've also used that audit firm. And actually, further to Mr. Nicastro's question, this will be the 4th audit firm that the town of Chatham has had while I've been in their employment.
Right. Okay. Thank you. But good job. Looks good. I think it looks tight. Thank you.
Great. Peter?
Yeah, excuse me. I agree with my prior selectman. My only comment is that I like the idea we're moving towards automation. I'd like the idea that we have a different audit firm. You know, it's always good to have another set of eyes. And well done. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All
Thank
right,
you.
You can move on. Yep,
Thank
go ahead.
you. Moving on to the capital items. As you know, or as you're well aware, you're still reviewing some of the standalone capital items for inclusion in the warrant. However, the capital budget at this point remains unchanged to when it was presented in January. We've reached out to the department heads to see if they had anything that they'd rather, trade off or put off till next year and have something else that was more important, but we haven't heard anything back from them. So the capital budget will remain at the 2.8 million as it was presented back in January. And again, any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dean? Dean, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No worries.
Alex, looking at the capital and budget summary page, there's no number to it, so it's it's the 3rd one from the end. Well, it's the 3rd separate piece of paper from the end, probably the 6th page from the end. And with particular reference to item 22-11, the Crowell Road intersection, it says $342,515 separate article. My question is it the intent that we're going to be offered this article, and that would be the opportunity for the board to discuss whether we want to proceed with this project? Because when we had our priority setting session a month or so ago, a couple of months ago, I think there was considerable sentiment among board members that we might want to close out this project for want of significant public support. At least that was my position. I was the one that raised that point, and I think it drew some sympathy from other members of the board. But I just wondered, what is the plan going forward on this?
So, Madam Chair, I can speak to that. So the Crow Road intersection is actually could be funded by Chapter 90 state aid. We've received approval to use that fund. It's a little less. It's about $237,000. So it would not be a separate article. However, the board has asked that we bring this project back to the board before we conduct any further work on it. So right now we're just in a holding pattern. We'll probably resume the review of this with the board in a couple of weeks. We just wanted to get you past the budget and the annual town meeting warrant. But this does not require a separate article. There is Chapter 90 funding, but we're going to hold on the board's request that we review it before the 25% is indeed submitted to MassDOT for their consideration.
So Jill, thank you for that explanation. So this item would not necessarily be going forward on the town meeting warrant. It would depend on what the board's pleasure is when you come and present it to us for further review. Do I understand that correctly?
Correct. There's state aid for funding to get it to the 25% design submittal, so there's no request for additional town funding. This is something new that just came out a couple of months ago, allowing for us to use the Chapter 90 state aid. And we get about $360,000 to $380,000 every year, and we're allowed to accrue it. So more to come, but we're not presenting a separate article on this one. And then the only other change is that we still need to have a discussion on item 2201 for the Eldridge Garage property site. In here, we have a placeholder per se for $945,000 that would be considered as a separate article, but the board had asked for further review, and we also need to carve out the drainage on that. So those are probably the two updates, depending on where the board goes with your separate warrant articles. But the other capital items that get us to that 9% of our operating budget, there's been no change to that.
Okay. Thank you very much for that explanation, Jill, and for mentioning the Eldridge Garage, because I think that was another one where the sentiment of the board was to put something forward that was fairly limited for this upcoming town meeting. Thank you. That was it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dean. Corey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a very small one. Under Natural Resources and Harbor Master, 22-04, the float dock for Old Mill Boatyard for the Coast Guard. I know the Wolf revolving fund has been earmarked for that $500,000 tag. Did we explore any other alternative funding mechanism that might or may not be available on that? That's the only real question I have. It's to have $1 million, we're going to tap into the revolving fund. That if that's the best resource, fine. But I just like to make sure we don't exhaust other alternatives if there's other resources out there.
I got to ask if we've had any policy discussion on that project at all. Any? I don't remember.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
As I understand it from Dr. Duncanson, that this would be brought before the various waterways committees because that is stipulated for the Wolf revolving fund prior to coming to the town manager for final approval. But again, the various waterways committees must weigh in on it first, and then it works its way up the ladder for final approval.
Okay.
And I'm not sure about any alternative funding. Sorry.
Great. Thank you. All right, Jeff?
Yeah, I just want to revisit just refresh my memory on where we are with the replacement of the belt filter press and the influent building in the water pollution control facility. Where do we end up on that large big ticket item?
I think after your discussion on the workshop that we were going to get additional quotes on that, and I think I'd have to review my notes on that. The Finance Committee, as the town manager stated, did review some of your workshop and your notes and the minutes from the workshop, and that was one of their questions too, was on the belt filter press. And we were going to check whether it was available for separate funding under the Cape Cod Water Protection Fund, the new fund, or if it could be put off for another year. So we'll have to revisit that. But again, being the large dollar amount, it would be a separate article, which we would bring back if it is to move forward for this town meeting.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
All right. Okay, any other questions for Alex or Jill before we, all right. So we don't have to take any action tonight. Those are your questions, and really good. Looks great. We'll move forward on that. Thank you very much, Alex. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Our second is Attainable Housing Trust Fund. This is the use of the CPA funds. This would be special draft legislation. I just want to note that our town counsel isn't on the meeting, was unable to attend the meeting tonight. So I guess what we're going to do is turn it to Katie for review. Is that?
I think you
correct, Jill?
skipped one, Shereen.
I did. Where?
Yep. Designating town owned property.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Thank you very much.
Yep.
How could I miss that? That's the big one that everybody's talking about. Okay, let's go back and double back to town-owned properties, Middle Road and 127 Old Harbor Road. So let me just have a paper shuffle going on here. Okay. Katie, are you giving us an update on this? Is that where I'm at?
Actually, so yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So both Ally and I will be updating you on this agenda item. We have two parcels that are properties that would like to discuss tonight. One is Middle Road and the other is 127 Old Harbor. So I will turn it over to Ally to discuss Middle Road with some additional information. It will be a brief presentation on both both properties. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks for having me tonight. As Katie said, I just wanted to bring a few questions that the board had last time we discussed this. I wanted to bring some information back to you guys just to get some more clarity around some of the options that we had discussed last time. So again, just quickly going through this. This is the town-owned property on Middle Road. I did pull it up on my screen here. If you could see, it's on the north side in this green area. Just to give some context, the transfer station is down here. There are some Habitat homes existing in this location here. The Community Housing Partnership did recommend that this entire piece be dedicated for affordable and attainable housing. It's approximately 19 acres plus or minus. That doesn't mean, like we said before, that every piece of the property would be developed. We could do some, recreation, open space with trails, things like that, which could be a good use of the property as well. But the last time we were here, the board had some questions about how many potential bedrooms could be for each option. So I just wanted to bring that back to the board. So option one, which is this piece on the eastern side, we did discuss with the Natural Resources Department. So on-site septic could be approximately 12 bedrooms. And if you had an IA system, it could be about 15 bedrooms. So this site, again, was approximately 3 acres, and that's located inside of this red outline here. Option two, which is located on the western portion of the piece, is about 5.2 acres in total. On-site septic could be about 20 bedrooms. And if you had an IA system, it could be about 25 bedrooms. And so I also did just want to point out for the board, and I'll just go through some of these maps just quickly, is that the reason why we didn't bring to the board specific locations for housing development on the plan, so specifically putting where housing development could be with pictures of housing, is because we really wanted this to be a community-driven process. We want the community to be involved in what where the housing would be located, and also what, potentially amount of housing, things like that. So we really wanted to leave it kind of more as a blank slate before we go out in the community and get feedback, so that the community really feels invested in what is potentially could occur here. So I just wanted to point those two things out, and that was really my updates for you on that. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie unless you had any other questions for me.
Is Katie going to present any more on Middle Road, or is she moving on to? Okay, so let's pause there and questions for Middle Road, because we've had a lot of input here. I do want to ask you, Katie, I know the answer to this, but could you tell us what is to the west of this property and what's to the north of it? Excuse me.
Sure.
Because we heard mention of what was to the east and to the south of it. I just want to hear.
Sure, of course. So if you just take a look at my screen here. So again, this light green is the area that is Chatham, municipal conservation, in light green. So that's to the north of this property. And this kind of orangey color right here, that's to the east. That's Chatham Conservation. So this whole area is up by Goose Pond. And then to the west of this property here, this is a housing development. And again, this is the chat down here, which is more of like the western, southwestern, sorry, portion is Commerce Park. Just to give some kind of background. And then this is where the old sand pit is here, which is now going to be a solar field. And then there is some, more development on this side with housing, and Volunteer Park is over here. So that kind of gives you more of a outward view of what is around this specific location.
And of course, beautiful Goose Pond is right behind there as well, correct?
Yep, of course, it's right.
All right,
here.
great. All right, questions on our comments on the Middle Road property, Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Leave that chart up, okay, please, Ally?
Yep.
I'm going to make just a statement about how we've been moving in the last 7 to 8 years towards affordable housing, and it bring back some memories. The planning board, and at that time the Affordable Housing Committee met in conjunction, and that moved the planning board away from working specifically on neighborhood centers outside of South Chatham and then West Chatham. Towards more affordable housing. And the first thing up were ADUs. And I'll just remind people that this town was not, in my opinion, not ready for even something like ADUs, because when I went to the Board of Selectmen, you may remember, some of you were on the board, how it was described as a social experiment. We don't need any more of these and all of that. Now, all I'm doing is saying it's taken this town this long to get to a point where I think there's a real concern and an understanding of what needs to be done for affordable and attainable housing, especially if you look at what's happening with our school system and the number of, the percentage of seniors and what's happening with them. I'm going to speak directly to Middle Road on this one, because I disagree with some of the comments that were made. We're using 8.2 acres out of 19 acres. I'll make the point, it's well buffeted. You're in an area. I'm glad the chair mentioned where is it located. You come in from 137. You come in a with a housing group. On the left-hand side, there's a new housing development. I don't know how far they've gone since then, but that was on the western side. You come in from Sam Ryder Road. Yes, you're going through the sand pit. That whole area for utility for a solar panel was reviewed by the planning board considerably. A lot of buffer zone within that, and there's a utility there. You come in, you have transfer station at the bottom, but you also have the water treatment plant. That water treatment plant, there's a small road that comes off of it, and it's well buffered. The point is, we're using 8.2 acres in a mixed area for affordable housing. The point is, we need affordable and attainable housing, not 2 years from now. We need it now. And to make it happen within the next couple of years, we have to use all the resources at our capability. And
Everybody's muted. Shireen's muted.
Peter,
Peter,
you're muted.
You mean I went through all of that and I was muted?
No, maybe the last 4 sentences, Peter.
Okay, I'm not a Mac guy, but I'm learning how to be one. So my point is that the need is critical right now, and it's not just one location, and it's not the perfect locations. We can't let the good be the enemy of the perfect be the enemy of the good, especially on something like that. So I would say, we need a combination of affordable, attainable, and rental housing. We have 2 pieces of property with 3 acres, 3.2 acres, and 5 acres on the other that are well buffeted, that are going to be in a lovely area around them. Yeah, it's a little bit farther. Do I want a first choice to be in, let's say, West Chatham? Yes, I do. But I want this also because it's an important piece of what we need for this town. So in general, I would support Middle Road. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Peter. Dean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I also support the dedication of Middle Road as proposed for affordable and attainable housing. And I thought we had made that point clear when we met on the 2nd of February, so I was a little surprised with all the emails. I appreciate the enthusiasm and passion for us to want to do this, but I think we were moving in that direction, and we simply wanted to get a little more information, which we have since received. As everyone can guess from the descriptors in our executive sessions in recent times, we are looking at other parcels. And I do very much appreciate the comments that Mr. Levitt made this evening and has made before about locating affordable and attainable housing in village centers. I don't think doing something on Middle Road is inconsistent, but I also don't think that Middle Road necessarily takes a higher priority over parcels elsewhere. I think we need to move boldly in several directions. I could see the property at Middle Road being used for housing for workforce housing and for younger demographics, and perhaps locations in village centers for, in addition to those demographics, of the older demographics in town. So I think we can do more than one thing at the same time. And but I do support Middle Road, and I think Peter made a very good defense of the Middle Road property as well, or case for the Middle Road property. So those are my comments. I intend to support going forward with Middle Road tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Shireen. And, I'll echo the sentiments of my fellow board members. I think that having affordable and attainable housing on Middle Road and these actually two gorgeous pieces of property, it doesn't mean that it's not mutually exclusive, that we can't also entertain affordable and attainable development in our village centers, which I also think is very much apropos. So to Mr. Levitt's earlier point, I think we can do both. I do think that this land is well buffered, if you will, and I think it's very attractive, especially to the north and east. And I echo Selectman Acastro's sentiments that I think we kind of had already made up our minds, and we did get a torrent of emails, which is fine, but we just kind of wanted to look around a little bit more. I do have a couple of questions. The wastewater plan is, very close by. Why would we entertain IA and not a sewer here, I guess is my first question. My second question is, if we were to so designate and developed elsewhere and suddenly became, had a surplus of affordable and attainable housing, if we designate this thusly, could we ever redesignate it coming back? And I'm not saying entertain that. I just want to know legally if we could ever possibly redesignate. A couple other points. We've entertained notions of affordable, attainable housing on this property for a long time. I remember the planning board talking about it. The price is right. I don't think developing here is going to stigmatize anybody. I think it's again very sequestered, very attractive, and I guess that's what I've got. And I will support its designation going forward. But I would like the answer to those two questions, especially about the sewer. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Allie.
Yep, I can just answer quickly the question about the sewer. Staff did talk to Natural Resources Department to determine if potentially the sewer could go here. It could. Obviously, it would, cost money to connect to this location, so that is something to consider. But I just wanted, when we're, creating the staff report and bringing it to the board, we just wanted to give you the options that are currently on the ground, but that does not exclude sewer. It would just cost money to, potentially hook up.
Great. Jeff, did you have a follow-up?
Shireen, thank you. I just have a quick one. The amount of bedrooms then I think could be increased should we sewer. Would it not, Allie?
So this is a zone 2, which is 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet. I do believe that if sewer was to come here, we could increase the bedroom count. So that could be an option.
Okay, thank you very much. And the redesignation, should we not develop one of these pieces?
I do believe that you could redesignate. It would have to go back to town meeting, but I would leave that to maybe the town manager or Katie to make sure.
Sure, I can jump in. So I think that if it were designated as affordable or attainable housing through town meeting, I think you have the option to do either. But if you are designating it for housing purposes and decide, for some reason, if that doesn't happen and it was decided to do something else, it would require another town meeting vote. I will say that if it were, if properties are built there and they are affordable, the requirements now are that a deed rider would be put on the affordable properties in perpetuity, but that doesn't mean that there couldn't be a mix of affordable and attainable housing opportunities on the same property.
Great. Good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Corey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, housing on Middle Road is something that's long overdue. When I was on the planning board, I remember having discussions with Terry Whalen, and so there's some concept plans out there, and it for whatever reason it never moved forward. And it's a beautiful area. Growing up in this town, I love it when people say about stigmas, about living in this part of town, or this area is so far away from this other part of town. There's so much distance. I mean, Chatham is a beautiful community. Every inch of it is a beautiful community. So I think Middle Road, and I appreciate the fact that it was pointed out that we have the natural resources, the ponds, the conservation areas surrounding this area. Yes, we have industrial areas, but there's also beautiful natural resources that we have, and anyone would love to be living in that area. So designating Middle Road for housing, our housing needs, makes a whole lot of sense. And like was said previous by other speakers, we have other projects, multiple bedroom projects, hopefully coming forward, that we can spread the need. The need is there. That's a glaring statement. We know we need it. But to have multiple projects with multiple potential bedroom counts coming forward is really the only way we're going to be able to tackle this. So I have no issue with designating Middle Road for our housing needs, moving forward on it. 32 to 40 bedrooms, depending on our sewer, the septic systems. If we hook up the sewer, I think we need to understand the cost of that. But it's a significant addition to the woefully behind scheduled housing needs that we're trying to push forward. So I'm on board for Middle Road. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Jeff, your hand's up. Did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I would, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. In that spirit, if you will, I'd like to move that the Select Board declare the land surplus, both those lots on Middle Road, and to authorize its use for affordable and attainable housing. That's a motion.
Second.
Okay. We have a second.
Second. Second,
Right.
Peter.
Okay. I just want to say something before we do vote or continue that discussion, but Allie's got her hand up. Allie.
Sorry, I just wanted to make one comment about the motion. So technically, right now, it's not two parcels, it's just one contiguous parcel. So I just wanted to point that out if you wanted to change the motion, or if you did want to just designate maybe one option or two options.
Jeff?
Yeah, I would designate both, please. The whole parcel.
The whole parcel?
Yes.
So you've amended your motion to state that it's the whole parcel.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. And
I would
the second of, okay, great. All right. I just want to make a note on this, and I guess we've talked about it, but there were a lot of emails here, and we appreciated that. But I guess I have to say, in light of the emails we got, that move that advocacy towards town meeting, because if you look at this agenda tonight, you will see that this board that's been, in its intactness since 2017, has done more to move affordable housing forward than there has been in a long time in Chatham. And we are very motivated as a group to continue that. What I need to have to explain is all of this takes time. It takes time because we're not just a developer going to a planning board to get approval on a development. We have many things to consider here in moving forward in any of our initiatives, legislation, state legislation, our own bylaws. We have town meeting approval. But one of the things that I think that everybody needs to have been hearing from community development that we are agreeing on is process. We want this to be inclusionary. We want to be able to do what's right. And that's been our motivation as a board as we've moved forward with any of our initiatives here. And it's taken time, folks. I know that the towns move at the speed of a snail, but we're getting it done. And this year should be an exciting town meeting in respect to affordable and attainable housing for Chatham. If we vote to approve many of the things that we have moving forward into the spring. Saying that, is there any further comments on Jeff's motion before we take a vote? Okay, we're going to take a vote. All right, I'm going to turn to Jeff first.
Aye.
Dean. Dean.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. The motion is moved to declare this land surplus and move it forward for attainable and affordable housing. All right, thank you, Ally, for the presentation, and I guess we're going to move on.
We got one more, Shereen.
Yeah, I know. We're going to move on to Katie's presentation.
No, we have one more motion on that land.
We do? Okay.
Yeah,
To declare it surplus?
To place it on the.
Place it on the warrant.
Place it on the warrant. Sorry. Do I have a motion to place it on the warrant?
so move, Peter.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right, we'll take any further discussion on that. All right, let's take a vote. Peter.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Chair says aye. All right, it's been placed. Okay. All right, now we'll move on to 127 Old Harbor Road.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just wanted to follow up. We had a brief presentation or brief discussion on 127 Old Harbor Road at the meeting on February 2nd. And I think that there was some interest expressed in looking at that property to see what we could do with it. I will say that during or since that meeting, we've become aware of a new grant program that the state has for underutilized municipal properties. And we would like to move forward with applying for a grant for to look at 127 Old Harbor Road to see what could be done. But just wanted to bear in mind that if we were to move forward to town meeting for using this for housing purposes, if the board was so inclined, we wouldn't necessarily have to designate it for a specific whether it be affordable or attainable. It could just be used for some sort of housing purposes if the board was so inclined. So we wanted to present that option for the board to consider. If not, we can move forward with applying for the grant and then come back to the board with some options that would be given to us by a consultant. And then, but it would be a year before we could, before it would be next annual town meeting of 2022 before we could actually get something back on a warrant. So just wanted to have the board consider those if they were thinking of this property for something in the more immediate future.
I thank you, Katie. I think in the spirit of this property, in the spirit of what was in the deed restriction was that the owners wanted it to be housing for families or whatever. I can't remember. Is that true? The initial deed restriction?
It was regarding a playground. So the deed restriction was for the playground, but so the building itself was not necessarily because again, it was still a residence at that point in time. So it was really about the playground.
So I want to speak to the flavor of Old Harbor a little bit, because I know that there was one of our board members, I don't know if I think it was Dean that had mentioned that he thought it'd be good to sell this off and put that money towards another project. But what I would really like to talk about is being inclusionary in neighborhoods, and this is a perfect example of that. Old Harbor Road used to be, when I was younger, was a family neighborhood. There was the church next door, the church at Highland Avenue. You had downtown. This is a great place for a housing scenario for affordable or attainable housing. It's close to schools. It's, you know, within walking distance to the town and to groceries. It's somewhat near to Oyster Pond. It's a really great place. Old Harbor is a really great place to grow up or to live, and it is quintessential Chatham quality of life. And I really think that we should be looking at providing that opportunity to our residents in the way of moving towards continuing to plan for this for housing purposes, as Katie had presented. So that's what I have to say about it. I'm sure that others will have different opinions, and I think Dean's the first with his hand up, and then Corey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do in fact have a different opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll reiterate what I said a couple of weeks ago and what I've said several times in the past. I don't think that this parcel should be dedicated to the housing purposes. I think it should be retained in the town's portfolio of real estate. It's a choice parcel. The return on the investment here would be no more than 1 or 2 units. The deed, I know the restrictions appear to have terminated, but the deed talked about putting no additional structures on the property. I think it should be saved for possible future municipal use or disposition, not just a sale of the property. That was one option I mentioned as to the future. It abuts the elementary school. We're looking at ways to try to keep the elementary school in Chatham, and we had the joint meeting with the Harwich Board and the school committee recently, and we're going to have a forum of our own to discuss that. One option for the town of Chatham to consider in saving the elementary school may be for the town not just to pay for the operating costs of the elementary school, but to withdraw the school from the district and run it as the town of Chatham Elementary School with a separate school committee, as they do in some other districts. I'm not proposing that, but that's an item that might possibly be in the future. I'd hate to see the town give this property up for a particular purpose when the return is so little, and then 15, 20 years from now, we regret that we took that decision and put some perpetual restriction on it. I don't think that using this property for affordable and attainable housing is the highest and best use of this parcel, and I think it should stay within the town's general portfolio of properties. Those are my concerns.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Corey?
Chair, I'll make my comments very brief. I've stated them the last time we discussed this, but I'm just going to kind of just summarize where I stand. Philosophically, removing the housing component for a moment. Philosophically, there were provisions for this land, for the playground, and comments to the no additional structures be placed on the parcel. And I know town council has opined that they've expired, and so be it. But I have a hard time getting over the wishes the family had to this land, that we stay within the spirit of those wishes as best as possible. Also, mechanically, it's the only adjacent parcel to the elementary school. I very much support our elementary school and maintaining an elementary school in this town. We don't know what the future is going to hold, and I think it's a little bit short-sighted to remove the only other parcel that would potentially lead to any type of expansion or development of some sort that we may or may not need. And that should be made clear to us in the next 5 or 10 years. But if this was a parcel that was going to yield 5, 10, 15 bedrooms, probably may have a little bit of a different flavor about it. But it's going to be, 1 or 2 units maybe. And it's a unique piece of property. I very, very much support spreading affordable, attainable housing throughout the community. But with the uniqueness of the property and the wishes of the Ellis family and the provisions that how I understand them, I have a hard time acting on this property on any topic at the moment until those two issues are clarified. So it's certainly not an anti-affordable attainable housing decision on my behalf. You could pretty much throw any project out there, and I want those two questions answered from me. But I don't believe this is the time to act on this parcel. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question for Katie on the grant. What exactly would that grant do? What would you be looking at?
Through the chair, we would be looking to hire a consultant to do a review of the property to see what could be done there. If we were thinking of, from a housing standpoint, they would actually, it's quite possible that they could look at the property for any number of reasons, because, just it's the property, the program is new overall, and it's a underutilized properties program. So they could be looking at it for any number of uses, but our intent was to have them look at it for potential housing opportunities.
Okay.
And then they would be reviewing for, just looking at redeveloping it. And so whether or not it would, it could be the plans, the cost of doing the plans, or it could actually include the cost of the development as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think that we should continue doing that. Yeah, I think community development should try to go for the grant, no matter what. I was one also that said you might consider selling this, and I meant it as I think we have a number of town properties, and and I'm saying this in general. We should consider what we want to do with those properties, whether or not we want to sell them or not. We never seem to say we want to sell a piece of property. I agree with I agree with both sides. It's a beautiful piece of property. It's great to have. It would be wonderful to have families there, and at the same time, I think we should keep it within the town. The return on how many bedrooms you have, I understand. That bothers me, especially when we have other properties, for instance, like the old COA, which who knows what's going to happen, but I would say that would make a better place to put a number of apartments or condos, like for affordable housing. You could make the argument that we should sell it to somebody to do that. So I think we should keep it within the town. I'd rather find out what comes out of and I normally don't like to kick the can on something, but since this is a new grant, I think we should continue. Community development should get the grant, take a look at what we should put there. We can discuss what it is the grant would be, and I guess you can come back and tell us how you're going to apply for it. But I think that's fine, because otherwise, we need housing. I'll say it again: we need housing now, and we need housing in numbers now, and that's where our focus, I believe, should be, because we wait 2 or 3 more years before we make decisions. We're not going to have an elementary school, as far as I'm concerned, and I think we need to save our elementary school. And elementary schools are central to a community, and school systems are. And if we're going to we're looking at getting more types of jobs that are appropriate for Chatham, you need a good school system, period. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Shereen. So I'm scratching my head a little bit. Here we have a piece of property that has been under the control of the town that we've never used. We use it for storage. It's got a roof, and it's a good roof. It abuts an elementary school. Be great housing for a teacher or a young family or 2 young families that could use the playground that we're not going to mess with next door to it. So it's near downtown, as Shereen has noted. It's close to recreation. It's near churches. It's accessible, and I would favor using it for affordable and attainable housing. I said that the last time we discussed this property. I think it's perfect. I don't think the family, the Ellis family, I think it was, that left us the property, ever thought that we have such a crunch on young people in this town, and I bet they would support its use. And I also think that we got an opinion from town council that says it doesn't matter. that at this point in time, we can do what we want with it. So I would, I think this also has to go to town meeting to reuse it as affordable and attainable. I guess I need some clarity there. And do we need to have a motion to that effect to get it in front of the town meeting? Do we need to do that? I guess that's a question for you, Shireen or Jill or Katie. Katie.
Oh, we can, we can go that direction.
Yeah. So I'm in favor of doing something. If we wait for a grant application, Katie, what's that going to be? A year?
Well, it could be. I mean, we can do this concurrently as well. I mean, we don't need to do one and then the other. I'd like to be able to, take a look at the property to see what it could be used for. But again, it would be waiting, if we don't want to do it this year, it will be another year before, we do anything with it, before we get to another town meeting opportunity. So
we haven't done anything with it in decades anyway. So
right.
What's another year or two? I mean, kind of a joke. I mean, I think we really ought to move on it.
I agree, Jeff. It's this property is sat around and just it's losing its heart and soul, whatever. It's a beautiful house. It has a lot of opportunity for some families in town, and I think it should be used that way. Did you put a motion together, Jeff? Did I hear?
No, I haven't moved anything. I just want to make another point that our approach to affordable and attainable housing, it's not a cookie cutter. It's not middle road. It's not village centers. It's not it needs to be Habitat for Humanity. It needs to be. We need to do everything. We need a full court press. If we're gonna rescue the elementary school and keep young families here, that might be 4 kids or 6 kids, and who knows? But if we don't try, again, this piece of property is lied fallow. If it was so valuable, why haven't we teed it up before? We haven't, to our detriment. And I've been a selectman for a while, but we should have teed it up before. I'll cogitate on a motion.
Okay. In the meantime, Jeff has his hand up. I mean, Dean has his hand up, and then Corey.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. I wanted to ask Katie a question or two. So this grant, if you got the money, would it be dedicated to this particular parcel, or is it a general grant for properties that the town has? And would there be a prejudgment going into the grant or its implementation that this property would be used for affordable and attainable housing?
So through the chair, again, the grant, it's a fairly new grant from the state, from Mass Development. The understanding is that it would be for this specific property. It would be property specific. We wouldn't be looking at other properties within the town in this grant round. However, that's something, an option for the future. I don't believe we would be tied into this because it's an exploratory grant looking at, the underutilization. I don't think we would be tied to having to do, whatever the outcome is. And again, because it's a new grant program, I mean, it's hard to say what the exact process would be. But the idea is that we would submit a letter of interest to Mass Development, and then they would let us know whether or not the project was viable to move forward. And that would be the process that we would begin with.
Yeah. Well, I'm not in favor of proceeding with a grant on this property. I think the property should be held in reserve by the town for potential future use and or other disposition of it. And I've been on the board 6 years now. We've had discussions back and forth about this parcel. At one point, it was being thought of as a potential for the senior center. I think I am in favor. I would agree with Selectman Dykens. I think we should vote this thing up or down tonight in terms of whether it should go to town meeting. I'm prepared to vote it down because I don't, for the reasons I've said. But I think we should have a motion on the table to advance this to town meeting, to declare it for affordable and attainable housing, or whatever you want to do it. I'll let somebody else frame the motion. But I'm in favor of getting this question resolved tonight because I don't want. This is like a bad penny. It keeps coming back. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Corey, and then Jeff.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to try to ask these questions, and sometimes I know my mind thinks differently than you guys, but so with the provisions that were in place, if they had been renewed and not expired, we wouldn't be having this conversation necessarily. So there's a mechanical or philosophical question that I've hit on a couple times. So I have a hard time saying that we're okay to move forward and do whatever we want with this property because the provisions have expired. For any use, are there any other parcels in town that we have this potential scenario to play out? I don't know. And to Jeff's earlier points, I mean, this parcel has been sitting around for a while, but my memory is that the provisions that were in place kind of deterred us from acting on said proposals over the years. So that's where I'm stumbling a lot. Again, the mechanics of what the family wanted to do with the land. I've heard through the grapevines, if we could narrow it down that we put an affordable housing unit, that it's dedicated to a teacher or someone in the school system, that the family would be supportive of that. But I know we can't do it that narrowly. So that's just the reality of it. And again, I don't know where the elementary school's future stands. I hope to God we hold on to it and it comes around and we rebound it. But it's a unique parcel next to the elementary school, and just for pure planning purposes, to get only 1 or 2 units out of it, with all the other projects that we're going to put in the mix of the next year, hopefully, it's not one I want to act on. So I very sympathetic to the concept of the affordable housing and mixing it around town and the flavor of different styles. But I got to hold true on this one. I just respectively, I can't vote in favor of it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Sharina. I'll move that we direct town manager to draft an article that asks the town meeting to change the purpose for which this subject property is held by the town, to change it to affordable and attainable housing. Whatever kind of language you need, Jill. It's my motion.
Okay. Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Dean has seconded it. All right. Any further discussion? All right, let's take a vote then. Peter?
No.
Corey?
No.
Jeff?
Aye.
Dean?
No.
Chair says aye. Okay, the motion does not pass. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Is there any other discussion on this? Any other motion? Okay.
Well, do we now want to pursue the grant?
I would like to.
Come on,
Okay.
guys.
We
Okay.
don't need a motion for that. The town manager could do that
Well,
with a consensus of the board, right?
Well, I think you need to speak up.
I think we need,
a consensus.
I think, I think that, I think we have consensus to an exploration of the property. Dean?
Well, I'm not sure we do. I'd rather
Okay.
see a vote on it so the town manager is not left in a quandary here.
Right.
Okay, great. Let's have a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the community development move ahead with a grant application for this property. I can't remember the name of the address on it right away.
127.
127 Old Harbor.
Old Harbor Road.
Second.
Second, okay. Corey?
Question, is the grant going to cover the full cost of such exploration or a portion of it?
We don't know that for sure, but I think it would cost I think we would go for the entire cost of the exploration and probably not for any type of construction. Because my assumption is we would bring it back to the board once the determination was made about what the best use of the property would be.
Well, I guess I'm pausing because in my earlier comments about the elementary school, we don't know what the status is, so we don't know what the best use is in 5 years or 10 years. And I know we're talking about right now, so I guess I pause at that. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion before we take a vote? And we had a second on that motion,
I
correct?
seconded it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. All right, let's take a vote. Peter,
Aye.
Dean,
No.
Corey,
No.
Jeff,
Aye.
chair says aye. Motion is passed. Okay, we'll be looking at purposes for the property.
Thank
All
you.
right, guys. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Ally, on that
Thank you.
presentation. All right, so the next is Attainable Housing Trust Fund. This is Town Council has drafted language on special legislation for a new housing trust. Katie, are you making this presentation or is Jill? Katie?
Sure. Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as indicated in the memo, Town Council, per the board's request, drafted legislation to be filed to create a combined affordable and attainable trust. We're calling it just the Chatham Housing Trust to encompass both affordable and attainable housing opportunities. I believe we've provided a draft for the board's consideration. And if the board is inclined to move forward, we would prepare a corresponding warrant article to go along with it. So I know that we did receive some suggested edits, and we can certainly, if the board would like us to, we can run those by Town Council and for incorporation if he sees fit into the draft legislation.
Thank you, Katie. Dean, this was your recommendation to explore, so, and your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not sure it was some, apparently people, it was mine. That's fine. I'm happy to take ownership.
Okay.
I just had a couple of possible edits, and it's unfair to the rest of the board other than you and me, Madam Chair, because we're the only ones that have seen Mr. Meyer's comments, but right. I'm fully supportive of those going over to Town Council for him to include or not include in any revision of this as he thinks appropriate. But on page 4, at the very bottom, Roman numeral small 13, XII, it says comprise, attribute, defend. I wonder if comprise is supposed to read compromise.
Yeah.
That council. And then on page 6, which is toward the end, last page of it, section 6, in the 5th line down, where it says households with children attending schools in the town of Chatham. I think there should be a comma after the word Chatham, because I believe that what follows, the relative clause that says who comply with the attainable housing income eligibility, I think the intent there is to modify all 4 of the categories that preceded and not just the 4th one. But perhaps Shauna or you could check with Town Council on that. I think those were the only suggested questions or edits. I'm fully supportive of going forward with this. I don't know whether it has to come back to us, but if I'm comfortable with us taking a vote tonight if possible, but okay. That's where I stand on it. Thank you.
Okay. And Dean, I want to note that it was a collective effort to move forward on the 200% AMI, that yours was the CPA
that's
funding.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So our Peter, you're next. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I was going to mention the 200 AMI too. It was a kind of a agreement of the board. I guess my question is, after listening to going through a few of those, the housing training sessions and groups that are at the state level, there's going to be a little pushback on the 200, but I believe other towns have done it. Is that right, Katie or Ally?
Yes, both. I think Nantucket is 150%, and I believe Provincetown is up to 200% for their rental market rate trust.
Yeah, I believe we have a very good argument. If you just take a look at our AMI and our housing costs, I think we're in a good position for that. I do have a question, and maybe, well, first question is back to the chair and Dean. Was it substantive changes that Mr. Myers put in? He's usually pretty good at what he puts in, and I was just wondering if it was, anything that would change the substance, because I like it the way it is. I don't want to change that. I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
Dean, do you want to comment on it since you were?
Well, I read them. They just came in today, so I didn't have a great opportunity to study them. I think some of them might have been substantive, Peter. Some of them I think were for clarification purposes. So I really wasn't in a position to judge whether they were, agreeable or not. And I had a follow-up point, Madam Chair, if Peter's finished when others have spoken. I'm not on now. Yeah,
go ahead.
Does this have to go to town meeting before it's filed with the legislature? Is that how this works, Jill or Katie?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The reason I raise that point is that I know that I've had a communication from an individual who suggested that there might be a slotted position for a representative from another committee as well as the Community Housing Partnership, and I just wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for that to be aired at the appropriate venue. So that's all. Thank you very much.
So I think the process is we probably have town council look at those edits, and if we have a motion to create an article, that we simultaneously go through that process when that article is presented. I think that's probably going to be the best approach. And to speak to the concern about the legislation pushback, I think we met, or Katie and I don't know if Katie and I were in Boston at the State House. I think we talked with Rep. Peak on this back in 2018. I'm not sure if you were with us, Katie, or not. Maybe it was some private citizens that went for the visit. And she was really enthusiastic about it and did mention the other towns that had worked on these projects and were able to move it forward. And I think that the State House is framed to think about affordable housing on a state level a lot differently than they were a few years ago. This is not just a Chatham, this is not a Cape problem, this is a Massachusetts coastal community problem. So I think we have a lot of good support around that. Peter, your hand's still up, and I think we talked all over you. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Allie, did you have something you wanted to add before I get to Jeff?
Yeah, just very quickly, I wanted to say that this proposed legislation, really mirrors the Affordable Housing Trust enabling legislation, which might make it easier when we go to the State House for approval.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Right, good point.
Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just, are we going to see those suggested changes by Mr. Myers, in a draft, if you will, before we actually vote it?
I think we can send those along to everybody.
Okay.
We'll have Shauna send them along, but I think the intent is to have town council look at it and make some recommendations that we'll discuss at the next, we won't vote. We could vote to move this into an article format if we want to, with suggested changes to be considered at our next meeting, I guess. That makes sense, Jeff?
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I'm certainly supportive. I just want to see those, if some of those suggested changes were substantive, and it sounds like they were, then I'd like to see them before I actually vote for, actually vote to recommend.
Right. Okay. All right. Anybody want to make a motion to?
Could I make one more
on this?
Could I just make one more point, Madam Chair? So back at your meeting on January 12th, we had talked about the current makeup of the Affordable Housing Trust and perhaps bringing something forth to town meeting to change the current makeup. But based on a conversation that staff had with town council, we are actually recommending deferring that until this potential Chatham Housing Trust would be created. That way it would not, stop the work of the trust that they're currently working on and creating a new makeup of another of a new board. So we're recommending that we do not move forward with that legislation, that change to town meeting at this time, and that we wait to see if this legislation passes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Katie. All right. All right. Any motion to move forward with this?
Madam Chair, this is Dean, I'm a little confused about, in terms of what Katie just said. So is there, this legislation that Mr. Costello drafted for us in section 2 is fairly specific about the composition of the trust. So what legislation are you talking about that would be enacted before we went to town meeting? Is there some general legislation on the Hill right now?
No, I apologize. I misspoke. So what the discussion on the 12th was to move forward to town meeting with a warrant article to change the makeup of the current Affordable Housing Trust. And the recommendation is that we wait for this special legislation to pass before we make any changes to the current makeup of the trust.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, but we're still talking about putting this particular legislation, as might possibly be further amended by Mr. Costello, and sending this to town meeting in May.
Yes.
This legislation.
Correct.
Okay. All right. You're talking the distinction between the town bylaw and the town legislation, and this legislation.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jeff?
Yeah, just a comment. We wouldn't change our bylaw until we had this legislation in place, is what Katie just said, I believe. And I'll move that we request Jill Goldsmith, town manager, to draft an appropriate article that includes, this draft to be possibly edited substantively by recommendation of town council, or by suggestion of town council.
And a second from Dean. Okay, any further discussion? All right, let's take a vote on this. Peter?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
And chair says aye. Okay, we're going to move forward with that. Thank you, Katie and Ally, for your feedback. All right. Again, I just want to reiterate that item 3, real estate transfer tax, this item is being tabled for a future meeting. A board member, Dykens, has been working on this and will be presenting very soon on this agenda item. All right, so the next is Community Preservation Act special legislation relative to attainable housing. And this one was Dean's suggestion. So let's hear from Katie.
Sure. Again, thank you, Madam Chair. So so Town Council did draft the potential legislation, and again, if the board is amenable and wants to move forward, we will prepare a corresponding town meeting warrant article to go along with it. But it is very brief, and it is something that has been presented to the board. I think it was presented back on January 12th, but we did want it to mirror what we were providing for the trust legislation as well.
Right. Okay. Okay. Dean, do you want to speak to this since you were a proponent of it?
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's very simple. This is draft legislation to allow the town of Chatham, and only the town of Chatham, to tap into community preservation funds for attainable housing. Currently, you can use affordable housing, use those funds for affordable housing, but non-attainable. And we've defined attainable to reach up to 200% of the area-wide median income. So I think he's drafted what we asked him to do, and I'd like to move that we instruct the town manager to prepare an article for the annual town meeting in May, or whenever it takes place, that presents this legislation to the body for filing with the legislature.
Thank you, Dean. Do we have a second? Jeff has a second. Great, thank you. Do we have any further discussion on this? Okay, why don't we just go for a vote on that then? Okay, all those in favor? Jeff?
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
the chair says aye. All right, we'll move that forward. It'll be an interesting
Yes, it will.
piece of legislation. Okay, all right, I look forward to that. All right, so we're now moving into some Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees follow-up items and housing funding initiatives. We did have, and I think some of the trustees are on the call, on the meeting as well. First one is the Habitat for Humanity 11 George Ryder Road South. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund is to sign the property closing documents. And I guess we're going to have Katie give us an overview of this right now.
Actually, if I may, I'm going to turn this over to Allie.
Allie.
Thank you. So in 2018, the Affordable Housing Trust awarded 11 George Ryder Road South to Habitat for Humanity. In July of 2020, the ZBA approved the comprehensive permit to create 2 parcels on this lot, and they're both capital A affordable. I just did want to point out, because there was a comment at the beginning of the meeting. During the ZBA meeting, the board did consider the RPZ area location. Matt Karen, the airport consultant, was there, Huntley Harrison, and we also received a letter that was put into the record from Terry Whalen, who's the liaison to the Airport Commission. So I did want to point those few things out. But we do also have Beth Wade, who's on the call as well, so I'll just turn it over to her. But this is a request to formally close on this property, to hand it over to Habitat to start creating those 2 houses.
Great. So just so everybody knows, Beth Wade is the Director of Land Acquisitions and Project Development for Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod. Beth, welcome.
Thank you very much, Shireen. Yes, so we're here for 3 different things. One is for a signature on the regulatory agreement. DHCD and both the Habitat attorney as well as Mr. Costello, the town's attorney, have agreed upon that regulatory agreement that will be recorded at the time of the deed. We're also here regarding the amended land disposition agreement. You may recall that I came back to see you with regard to extending the completion date a bit, and that is what that amended document is about. It gives us until the 23rd of March 2023 for the sale of those 2 homes. And then the third thing is the deed itself with the rider. And I did confirm today with Habitat's attorney that she has had a conversation with Mr. Costello. And so once that deed is signed, Allie I'll go pick it up and deliver it to Kate Mitchell, and she will record it on behalf of all of us, along with Exhibit C, which is the DHC deed rider.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Okay, Allie, your hand is up. Would you like to speak?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say one quick thing, that all of these documents have been reviewed by town council and approved.
Thank you, Allie, for that. First Dean and then Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I in the land disposition agreement, on the page 4 of 13 and the final whereas, I think there is an error in the date. I'm sure it's just a typo. It says that the Board of Selectmen and the Affordable Housing Trust voted on July 20th to extend the construction completion until May 23rd, 2020. I think that probably is meant to be 2021.
It's actually meant to be 2023.
But this refers to a vote that we took on July 28th, 2020. Did we vote on that date to extend it to 2023?
Oh, yes, that is correct. You did.
That's what we voted back then?
I believe so.
There's a 2-year construction window, right?
There was originally a 2-year construction window, and what occurred because of COVID, some of our projects were slightly delayed, so we requested an extension for this project. So the end date for the project, which was approved and is in the recorded minutes of that July Housing Trust meeting, is 5/23/2023.
Oh. Okay, well, it says 2020 on the document. I just want to make sure the correct date. I'll defer it to others, but to you and town council, and your own council, but I saw that and I wondered whether that was a correct year.
Well, that's incorrect, so we should all initial that.
Okay.
So it should read what, 2023?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick one, quick question for Ally on the whole RPZ, the runway protection zone. These two properties are not in the runway protection zone. Is that correct?
That is correct. They are right outside of the runway protection.
You're either in it or you're not.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. That's it? All right. Any more questions? Go ahead.
Sorry,
Sally.
and that was confirmed at the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing when they reviewed it.
Right. Correct.
Thank you, Ally. Any further questions or discussions for Beth? All right, if we're not seeing any, can we get a motion to move this forward, to authorize a transfer and to execute the deed and related agreements? Do we have a motion? Dean?
Madam Chair, I move that the select board approve the execution of the several documents that have been presented to us for the Habitat for Humanity development at George Ryder Road South. I don't know if that's sufficient. Katie or Ellie, tell me if it's not.
Do you want to authorize the transfer of the property to Dean?
Yes, I will include that in the motion, to authorize the transfer of these properties to Habitat for Humanity as presented in accordance with the provisions of the regulatory agreement and the amended land disposition agreement.
Okay. Thank you. A second?
I'll second that.
Everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to second it.
Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion? Katie?
Madam Chair, I just want to confirm, I think it should actually be the trust that it's the property is actually owned by the trust. And so I would just move that the motion say that it's the trust that would be disposing of the property or transferring the property.
And do we have to have?
That's true. I think you need to convene the trust.
Yeah.
Take a
All right.
vote.
Okay, then we need to convene the trust. Is everybody on? Think so.
I saw Bruce earlier.
Okay. Okay, let's take a roll of the trust. Would that be the proper procedure, just to see if everybody's here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. So.
All right. We're going to convene the Affordable Housing Trust for this vote. Megan?
Present? Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. We're just seeing if you're present. Bruce?
Present.
Jeff?
Present.
Ori?
Present.
Dean?
Present.
Jeff? Peter?
Present.
And the chair's here. Okay. Now, Dean, do you want to do your motion again, and then we'll take a vote of the Affordable Housing Trust on this?
Well, I'm not sure I can remember it all. What I said before,
Okay.
I move now. If
Okay.
maybe Shauna can repeat it back, but it was pretty comprehensive.
Shauna?
It was
Because we have to.
Transfer of these properties to this property to the Habitat for Humanity for the purposes set forth in the regulatory agreement and the revised land disposition agreement as presented to us, and that we authorize the execution of the deeds and the land disposition agreement.
Okay. And a second on that again, just to be
Second.
sure.
Peter.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peter. All right, if there's no further discussion, we'll take a vote now, okay? Megan,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. All right, thank you. Motion passed. Beth, thank you so much, and excited to see this project get underway.
We are too. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, great.
Good night.
Thank you. So do we close the Affordable Housing Trust, or do we just move on to the next item?
I think, Madam Chair, I think we're planning to go into executive session as the Affordable Housing Trust. Is that correct?
Yes, one more.
We have one more item to discuss, though, Dean, before we do. Okay, then, yes. All right. Something is missing in my agenda here. Okay, so we've moved that, but we need, right now, our last agenda item before public comments. We're getting an update, quarterly update on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And I think that's coming from Katie?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Katie.
All right, thank you. So, Madam Chair, so we received a quarterly report from the Housing Assistance Corporation, and the basically in the report we've had 3 applications from Chatham residents, and they were all actually 2 of them have completed the applications, and one application is still in process. There was a total of $9,554 utilized from other funding sources, and therefore no funds have actually been utilized from the $150,000 that was allocated. And we expect that to be the case for most applications moving forward. They will, again, HAC will only use town funds if other funds are not available. And so because there's been more funding for these programs, these additional emergency rental assistance programs, it's likely that those will all be expended before moving into trust funds. So the program is until, I believe it's next December is the end of this program. And should we decide that we would like to extend it, we can talk about doing that at that time. But we will just provide the trust with a quarterly update as we receive them from HAC.
Okay. All right. Well, I was surprised to hear this when I first saw the report. But I think knowing a little bit about some of the opportunities that are out there, and where people go, and the complication around applying and who's funded you already, and whether you've asked for funds from another place. I mean, this is out of our core. I mean, this is out of my league. And I think that, the needs-based community nonprofit do great work with people. And I really like to see this stay intact for a while. And then, we can bring this back for discussion at the termination of its tenure. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say, because I don't know what I'm rambling. Allie, you have your hand up, so you probably want to add something to this.
Just want to add something very quickly, that any funds that aren't expended will go back into the trust.
Right. Okay. Good to know. Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree with what you just said. You consider we have, the Chatham COVID Relief Fund. You have agencies, the Lower Cape Outreach, Homeless Prevention, the HAC. We have our own Catch, Chatham Ecumenical Council for the homeless. You have the St. Vincent de Paul Society. All very good things. Having said all of that, I mean, personally, okay, we haven't used a lot of this, but I'd rather have a little bit too much than not enough.
Right.
And I personally agree. I think we should keep this in to see what's going to happen, because a lot of these things who knows how it'll change. And it's an area that rentals are terribly expensive in our area. So I think we should continue with this. Thank you.
Thank you. I think also, it speaks to, rental opportunities in Chatham and where we're at that point too. Anyway, any more questions from the trustees for Katie on the update? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to the next update. All right. So before we move into executive session, this is the time again where it's an opportunity for public comment on any business agenda items, and hands are going up. So first is Mr. Myers, then Iris Selden. So Mr. Myers. Go ahead. George.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The focus of the comprehensive plan with respect to affordable housing is to locate it in or near village centers. I do not believe that concept is outmoded, nor did I hear anybody say why that concept is outmoded. If the reason that argument is because of a belief that there's little or no land available for affordable housing in village centers, my question is, has anyone looked at whether there is private land in village centers that is suitable for affordable housing and could either be purchased or taken for affordable housing? Now, I know you want to move forward with Middle Road, and I certainly understand that, but I do not agree that locating affordable housing in village centers is itself an outmoded concept. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Myers, I'm sure that you remember that we've had a request for proposal that's been an ongoing request for proposal for lands, just as a matter of clarification, for lands and properties within the private sector for some time now. So there's been some evaluation of that and considerations we hope to bring forward. Okay, next is, it says Iris.
May I say
Yes.
something?
Florence.
Yeah, hold on, Florence. George, you had something else you
right.
wanted to
I do understand that,
Okay.
but I am aware that there are probably a number of pieces of private property that I suspect no one has looked at, and Mr. Levitt has been circling the town for weeks and months and pinpointing places or pieces of land that could possibly be used for affordable housing that I'm quite confident no one has looked at yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, it's Florence Selden, Selectman, Select Board Member, Selectman Selden.
Chair. I want to thank the board for supporting the use of Middle Road for affordable, attainable housing. Affordable housing proponents had tried years ago, to get this done, and there was not support from the select board at the time, or from citizens. I believe that attitude has certainly changed. Peter has outlined what other housing there is on the road coming from Route 137, and I think another housing development is in keeping with those. The idea that there is a stigma attached to affordable housing, living in affordable housing, I hope is an outdated view that is perhaps one derived from the large high-rise housing that we had seen in urban areas. But I would like to refer you, and I think I've mentioned this before, to a perfectly lovely affordable housing development called Nauset Green in Eastham. You can look at it online or you can go in person, and it's a lovely place to look, with places for people to gather, for children to play. There are 27, it's a 65 unit development, 27 one-bedroom apartments, it's a rental, 31 two-bedroom, and 7 three-bedroom. Therefore, there will be a variety of family, older people, younger people living in one place. It's not exactly certainly isn't in a village center. It's off 6A. I can't remember the name of the road. There is some shopping area nearby, but not a lot of other things. But they have, all of the apartments are rented currently. even though the development didn't open very long ago. So I think that will happen to us. And I think you have made a very wise decision, and I appreciate it. And I just want to make one more thing. Remember, your board is building on the work of a lot of other people over the years. We didn't just get to this view about affordable housing in one day or 1 week or 1 month. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. Elaine, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I was very pleased about 127 Old Harbor Road. I think that is only going to become more valuable. And I think with all the transitions and the issues facing us, that we should hold on to it. So I'm not really sure what a grant is going to do to have people from the outside coming in and telling us what the uses are. I think we pretty much know that there's a lot of uses that we could probably put it to. Secondly, between now and town meeting, I mean, I'm the first to admit that I am totally confused about the Affordable Housing Trust and the difference between small a and large A, and what it means now that we have, you want to designate Middle Road, which I totally agree with, for that. But then the next steps, I think people want to understand what happens then. Is it does the town develop it? I mean, do we build the condos? Is it a private? Do you bring in a private firm to do it, or is it a combination? Because, we need to know how much money down the road is coming here so that we can reallocate resources. So that would be one thing I would hope people could be educated on. And the other one is the problem I've always had with is the question of who gets to be in the lottery system here. If we're talking small a, now that you've expanded the CPA, if I understand it correctly, to 200% of the normal amount, I would hope that the lottery is for people who live or work in Chatham versus someone from off Cape, somewhere in the state coming here. I mean, I think that's our whole point. We want to keep people here, or even if it's within the county. So I don't know what the restrictions are, but I would hope that there is a way for us to make sure that our residents and people who work here have priority for this housing, that have a connection to the town, rather than coming in here with no employment and no family and not even knowing the area. I think that's what we want. So hopefully you can educate us between now and town meeting so that we get a better handle on that. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Carolyn McClellan.
Yes, hello, everyone. So I just had a couple comments. One, I want to thank you all so much for moving on Middle Road, and to address some of the comments made about the work that the board has done. You guys have done a credible amount of work, and I know it's difficult. I know it's a labyrinth of things you have to move through, and I know things don't move quickly. I'm just trying to do my job and make sure that we have forward pressure on things not just getting pushed to the side for reasons that aren't really valid or that we can't overcome. Not that we don't have to jump through hoops, but we need to do something. So I do applaud you all for that. I'm thrilled about Middle Road. I'm very disappointed about 127 Old Harbor. I just want to address some of the comments made by some of the board members. One was trying to stay true to the original intent of the homeowner, the owner who gave it to the town. They wanted it for a playground for the children of Chatham. I'm sure they didn't want it to be empty for 40 years. I guarantee you that wasn't what they wanted. I don't think they want it to be sold to a private citizen who's going to turn it into $1 million summer home. I guarantee you that is not what they wanted. I think they wanted children to be playing in the backyard. And I know exactly how to do that. You let a family live there, and then that would satisfy this. I don't think that keeping it for further development of the elementary school, when the problem is we don't have children at the elementary school, we can't even come close to filling it now. And if we don't create more housing, it's just I don't understand that at all. And we're not asking you guys to, I know you've already voted on it, but we want the town to vote on it. Let it go. Everything you're doing is putting it on the warrant and letting the community vote on it. I know you got a lot of letters about Middle Road, and that support was drummed up pretty quickly. I think there's a consensus out there, and I think we'll be moving forward on 127 Old Harbor Road. But again, I do thank all the work that you're doing and appreciate the work that you're doing, all the trust work. These are all valuable steps in moving forward. So thank you very much. But I did want to express my concerns about the 127 Old Harbor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. And next is Tracy. Yeah, Tracy.
I just wanted to say in closing, there are no words to say how grateful I am for your vote for Middle Road. I'm very, very, very excited about it. I just want to, I don't even know if this is something that would, ever be able to fly, but I just want you to know that where 127 Old Harbor is considered, I know you guys have voted against it, but, if you ever wanted, for just maybe one round, if we could renovate it such that it could come into the MCI program, we could do a round. We could do 1 5-year, 2 5-year, and that would at least give two families chances to, to be able to buy homes, and maybe I don't know if there's even a way to have there be legal language so that it could just be something for the time being. But just so you know, the Housing Authority would welcome running yet another MCI house. I would always welcome another one into the fold. So thank you for everything you guys have done.
Thank you, Tracy. Any other comments from the remote?
Yeah, Shireen, hi, it's Cheryl. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay, well, again, I just want to reiterate what Carolyn said and Tracy said. So thank you so very much. Middle Road has been waiting a long, long, long time to hear the laughter of children and families. And you guys, thank you, Florence. She said it. A lot of people have worked very hard on this, and you have put forth your legacy tonight. So when it's on the warrant, so when it gets to town meeting, yeah, you guys did it. It's going to be your legacy. This Board of Selectmen 2021. Thank you so very, very much. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Shirley. Appreciate that. Okay. All right. If there's no other comments, I think we're going to accept a motion of the Affordable Housing Trustees to move into executive session. If I could get a motion on that.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, I'll offer this motion that the Affordable Housing Trustees go into executive session under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 39, Section 23B, Number 6. Consider the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, value of real property, private property acquisition for affordable/attainable housing. If such discussion may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the governmental body, with no return to open session by the Affordable Housing Trustees or the Select Board.
Second.
So
Okay, great.
The Select Board go into executive session as well. I guess we're part of it.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have a second on that. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Jeff. Let's take a roll call. Dean.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Bruce.
Aye.
Megan.
Aye.
Peter says aye. Okay, we're going to move into executive session. I want to thank everybody tonight, those on the staff that presented, and also to the community for their feedback on our initiatives that we presented tonight. There'll be more to follow. Have a good evening. Please stay masked up. Jeff, you have a comment?
Here? Do we stay here?
No, we jump into another meeting. You got emailed another meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.